Good morning, everybody. We'll get started here in about 1 or 2 minutes, maybe 1 minute. Give everybody a chance to log in. Still got some folks coming in. All right, well, I think it's been 45 seconds or so since I last said that, so we will go ahead and get started. Firstly, good morning, everybody. My name is Scott Secleary. I'm the statewide compensation manager here at DPA, and I served as the project leader for this system maintenance study, as well as all of the system maintenance studies completed this year. Also have our compensation analyst, Jesse Hernandez, our senior compensation analyst, Terry Pickett, and DPA's communications manager, Annabelle Asp, on the line today. The purpose of today's meeting is for DPA, us, to provide you a summary of the process and outcomes of the system maintenance study, as well as to provide an opportunity for you to ask questions and understand how the study was completed. One reminder, all attendees will be muted, so if you do have questions, please type them into the Q&A and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. So to get started, we'll review the agenda. First, we'll discuss the background and purpose of system maintenance studies, go over the steps and general timeline of the process, and then finally, we'll discuss the results and recommendations from the study. Again, this presentation is intended to be a high-level summary, so we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. So, system maintenance studies are the way the state is able to update and maintain all or part of the pay structure and classification system. The Personnel Board rules define them as the process used to determine classes and/or pay grades and to properly place all affected positions into new classes. This typically includes a review of all affected positions across all state agencies when applicable. The firefighter system maintenance study was primarily focused with the Department of Public Safety and DFPC. The firefighter study was conducted because the current pay structure and career path for firefighters is not comparable or competitive with other jurisdictions in the labor market, which we'll go into a little bit more on a later slide. So DPA collaborated with DPS as well as DFPC to complete a detailed review of the overall structure as well as the pay ranges for each job class. So in order to make pay ranges, however, a system maintenance study is required by statute. So that is why we are here today. Over the course of the fiscal year 23-24, DHR met with representatives from the Department of Public Safety, DPS, and reviewed class descriptions as well as the number of levels within the firefighter class. Early on, the team also identified the need for a new class series that would more accurately describe and differentiate fire marshal positions from other inspection-related positions within the classified system. So that piece was also added to the study. During the review, the team drafted new class descriptions, and we also completed an analysis of pay ranges. The new class descriptions, sorry, I lost my note there. The new class descriptions will be available soon on the DHR website, but in the meantime, you can find brief summaries in the job evaluation letter that has already been distributed to agency HR directors. We'll also have these slides available on the DHR website shortly after today's meeting, and I do know this is being recorded, so even though I said differently previously, I do believe there will be a recording available of today's presentation as well. Right. So, in reviewing pay ranges, DHR analyzed market data for similar positions in the external labor market as well as other jobs within the state's classified system. Sources of market data included the state's third-party compensation consultant, Mercer, surveys from other independent, reputable sources such as Employers Council, and data collected directly from other jurisdictions and government entities, usually through official public websites. For the firefighter system maintenance study, the specific local jurisdictions that we used as comparators are actually also listed in the job evaluation letter, so you can take a look at those. Once DHR completed the initial market analysis, the study team met again to discuss findings, make final recommendations, and prepare the job evaluation letter. After today's meet and confer, we'll review your feedback, and then we'll publish the final job evaluation letter on the DHR website. Implementation will occur on July 1st, 2024, so none of these changes will be in effect until then. So as a reminder, the step pay program is also going to be implemented on July 1st, 2024, of course, pending legislature approval of the governor's budget request. Placement is determined based on an employee's time in their current class series. So time in current class series is not impacted by any system maintenance study. So what that means, if your time spent in the firefighter series is 8, it will continue to be 8, regardless of how you're placed based on the system maintenance study. So although that's true, although the time in series calculation is not impacted, any new rate, if applicable, will be determined based on the new pay range for the new classification rather than the current pay range. So even though time in the series isn't impacted, we'll be using the new pay ranges to determine the actual rate that employees will move to if they do move their rate. So just as a quick example, say a position is classified as a firefighter 3 that has a time in class series of 10. Well, because they've spent 10 years in the firefighter class series, their time in series calculation will continue to be 10 regardless of that change. So based on that time in series calculation of 10, their new rate will then be based on the new pay range rather than the employee's current pay range. So now we'll talk a little bit about what the actual new structure will look like. We'll have pay ranges posted on the next slide. So as mentioned prior, the current classification structure for firefighters is not consistent with structures in other similar jurisdictions. So for example, the state structure currently only contains 7 levels of classification, and most other entities in the labor market have more levels than that. This has created several challenges. In particular, it makes it difficult to have competitive pay ranges as well as competitive career advancement. And it also makes it difficult for us to compare our positions annually when we look at market data annually, because our levels don't always align perfectly with other levels that we see in the market. So for that reason, the study proposes a new 9-level structure and also proposes new pay ranges that are, like I said, will be summarized on the next slide. And in addition, over the course of the study, pretty early on, we found that the current series used to classify fire marshal positions. They don't adequately describe or differentiate fire marshal positions from other inspector roles at the state. So, similar to firefighters, that created challenges regarding career progression and also the assignment of competitive pay ranges. So the study also proposes that a new fire marshal class series be created in order to create a similar career path as the one that will be created for firefighters. So believe it or not, that actually is close to wrapping up our formal remarks here. Now, again, these slides will be available for you to see on the DHR website, and we also have this information included in the job evaluation letter. You'll also have more detailed definitions of these classes available once we have the class descriptions also published on the website, which should be shortly after today's presentation, depending on sort of our final check. But I do want to mention one thing that's really, really important when you're looking at these new class series. A firefighter 4 in the current structure is not the same thing as a firefighter 4 in the new structure. We have 9 levels now instead of 7 levels. So the new structure is fundamentally different. And therefore, if you're currently a firefighter 4, you don't want to just look at the pay range for the new firefighter 4 and assume that that's going to be your new pay. We are planning to distribute letters, physical letters that will be mailed to you sometime in early or mid-February. We're still finalizing the details of that, but you'll get a physical letter that will contain both your new classification as well as your new pay range. So just wanted to call that out because I know that particularly in this system maintenance study, it can look like we're just tacking on 2 levels at the top, but actually we're taking away the current 7-level structure and we're creating a 9-level structure. So that actually wraps up all of the comments that we had for you today. Again, the more detailed description of the project and the process, as well as the findings and recommendations, is available in the job evaluation letter. So definitely take time to review that if you have a chance. Those will be published on the DHR website. And with that, I think we can open it up for questions. And Annabelle, I was able to find the Q&A part, so I'll just take a look and I'll read them out here. All right, so first question is, will these new pay ranges affect our administrative assistants who work within our organizations? No. This study, these updates will only affect positions that were identified as being in one of the new firefighter or fire marshal class series. So unless you're an admin assistant who is now mapped to firefighter class or a fire marshal class, then your position is not impacted by this study. Craig says, thanks. Thank you, Craig. What are the step rates for these jobs? So thanks, Richard. So I'm going to post, we currently have the fiscal year 24-25 pay plan out on the labor relations website, and that includes the step rate for each of the current classifications. We'll also post kind of a separate file that will show the same information for all of the impacted series from system maintenance studies. So I forgot to mention that, so thank you for asking. And we'll have that posted probably within the next week or so. But again, just keep in mind that I don't want you to look at any of those numbers and think that they necessarily are going to apply to you until you've received that physical letter that states your new classification. Because again, same thing for, say, criminal investigators. Just because somebody's a criminal investigator 2 now, that will mean something completely different when we implement the system maintenance study on July 1st. Looks like, oh, cool, great. All right, well, we get to see the justification for each of these ranges. So if I understand your question correctly, we don't have the actual, I don't have any files or, actual market analysis that we would make publicly available. You will be able to see the list of local jurisdictions that we compared our pay ranges to in the job evaluation, and that's actually specific for firefighters. We don't do that in a lot of the other system maintenance studies. But I would encourage you, if you have more specific questions about how compensation market analyses are conducted, you can always contact me. I would certainly recommend typically starting with your own HR team, just because they may be able to answer some questions a little bit more pointedly than I can. But generally speaking, we follow compensation best practices, and we use reputable professional market sources for all of the market data that we use in our analysis. Wilson says, can you repeat when we might expect a letter about our new classification and rate? We are planning on sending that out sometime in early or mid-February. We actually have to go through the same team that is responsible for mailing out the W-2s and other payroll-related documents. So we have to just kind of figure out a few things with them, technically speaking, and then we'll be able to have those physically mailed to you in February. The justification for where one's position landed. Sure. So I cannot necessarily speak to individual position class placements. I will say that placements are made based on positions, duties, and responsibilities, not necessarily an individual person's qualifications and qualifications. Um, so we did collaborate with agents with DPS to review those class placements. However, um, we primarily relied on the agency to place positions into classes, largely because I don't know the positions as well as they do. So again, I can't speak to individual position classifications, but if you do have questions about your own individual placement, your best first resource will be your HR team. Will the new Firefighter 4s be non-exempt? You know, it's a good question. I can't actually recall off the top of my head. Believe I believe it will be non-exempt. However, I can't remember if that's the first management level. Um, Let me actually jot that down, and I see it's anonymous. If you know, if you want to send that question directly to me, or if you want to send it to your HR team, we can get back to you on that. But I don't have it in front of me at the moment, and I can't remember if that's the first supervisory level or if level 5 is. So um, we'll get back to you on that. Is there a way to see how step pay is determined based on qualifications? Sorry, you may have already answered this. So step pay is not determined based on qualifications. It's based on time in series. So let's say you are an accountant 3. Any time spent as an accountant 1 and an accountant 2 will also count towards your time in series calculation. Now, if you previously had spent time as a human resources specialist 3, that is not the same class series as your current one. So that time will not count. But as opposed to qualifications of individuals, step placement is based on your time in series. And there's more details about that. And I probably should just refer you to the step pay website, the FAQs. There's a link to that on the labor relations website. But if you can't find it, please feel free. I would recommend getting with your HR team first. But if for some reason you need to contact me directly, please feel free to do so. Oh, yeah, and there's a step pay inbox, which is, shoot, let me pull up that exact email address. But there is a step pay inbox as well. And the address for that is DPA underscore step pay state.co.us. So that's DPA underscore STEPPAY at state.co.us. Since the study was done, have we looked into if any of the organizations have since increased their pay? So all of our recommendations, in particular our budget request, because system maintenance studies are funded by the legislature, they're not necessarily funded by individual agencies unless it's for a cash funded position, such as park rangers. But because we have to submit that request in October, so that the governor can submit the request to the legislature in November, we can't really, we have to sort of guess out in the future. And there are methods, there's methods in compensation analysis where we can do what we call aging the data. There's actually whole market surveys done around, what companies expect to do in the future. However, we won't actually have new market data available for firefighters or fire marshals for that matter until I want to say really the first new market data doesn't start coming out until around June of this year. But we analyze it every year. So short answer is no. However, we did use our best methodology in order to make a prediction around what those pay ranges would look like as of July 1st, 2024, as opposed to last year. So what were the criteria in choosing local jurisdictions you used to analyze pay structures? So we worked with DPS to understand, what the most important local jurisdictions were. We looked at jurisdictions that had similar levels of similar types of jobs. Um, we did look at the federal system. We understand that Colorado, that the DFPC is pretty influential in the overall market, and that we have to compete with, a whole host of local as well as other state and national jurisdictions. So there were multiple criteria, but generally it's similar size, similar types of job, and for the most part, those that were in close proximity geographically. So again, I don't recall forgetting the specific jurisdictions. I don't want to name any that weren't included, but I want to say there's like 15 or so that are listed in the JEL. So if you have a question about why a specific jurisdiction was included, I would again recommend reaching out to your HR team first, just because they actually know these jurisdictions better than I do. But again, you can always feel free to contact me directly. That's a great question. Has a study been done comparing our local ranges to other state fire agencies instead of local AHJ? I'm not actually 100% I'm not 100% sure on what AHJ stands for. However, the answer is yes. The study this year, we looked at other states, we looked at other localities, and we also looked at broader market data from our consultant, as well as the federal classification system. How many years of service would it take to reach the higher end of the new pay range? If you're referring to steps, you can see the actual time in series, the actual step that will apply to each section of the pay range on the labor, on that plan that's posted on the Labor Relations website. However, if you're asking more about, kind of in general or what a best practice is, that answer could actually be different depending on different situations. But in terms of what step pay is, that actually is detailed in that real pay plan. I think the midpoint is at step 10. So 10 years of time in series is the midpoint. So if you had, and then I think the next step up is 12 or 13 years, but you can find those exact numbers in the posted FY 24-25 pay plan. Yeah, so Richard, the Fire Marshal series has 9 levels, which are salaried, which are hourly. I'll have to get back to you on that, just because I don't remember off the top of my head, the exact description of all 9 levels. I know that I believe some will be non-exempt, some will be exempt, and typically it's the leadership level positions and higher that will be exempt, and the individual contributor levels typically are non-exempt in the firefighter world. Fire marshal, I actually would have to check in with your HR team just to make sure I don't give you some wrong information. So let me get with your team on that as well. It's a good question. Can currently exempt positions be reclassified to non-exempt? Yes. I don't know if that will occur for any individual positions in this study, but yes, generally speaking, that can occur. How did you compare our positions with the other agencies? For example, the current firefighter fours have a wide range of duties, from operational duties to agency administrator duties, that span several federal firefighter duties. So it's not always an exact science, Derek. What we do is we look at available information to us regarding descriptions. We don't compare based on title. I know in the firefighter and fire marshal world, things like lieutenant, captain, those words do have some sort of typically understood meaning, but we generally don't look at title. We look at the levels of experience, the qualifications, and to whatever extent we have available, the actual responsibilities and duties. Now, you mentioned that the firefighter 4 class has duties that span several federal firefighter duties. So we would have taken that into account when we looked at it, but we also didn't just look at the federal position's responsibilities. There were other jurisdictions. So using all of that information, we had to kind of do both the art and science of comp and come up with our new competitive pay ranges based on that comparison of duties and qualifications. All right, just for clarification, are the numbers in the chart representing pay increase to current salary or monthly pay? So the numbers in the chart are the new pay ranges. So if you're, so again, I don't want to say anything. You won't really know exactly how you could be impacted until you get that physical letter about your individual position's classification. But the numbers on that chart don't refer to salaries. They refer to pay. They refer to salary ranges. So I don't know. I hope that addresses sort of what you're getting at there, but I cannot speak to what will actually happen to any individual's actual salary. And they are in monthly. They are monthly pay ranges. I see some in the chat as well, but looks like they were all put into the Q&A, so we got to them. And thank you, Annabelle, for posting the Step Pay website. Super duper helpful. All right. Any other questions we haven't answered today? I'll say one more thing here. So you see our contact information on this slide. Kendall Branham is our other senior compensation analyst. However, she will be out for the next few months. But when she gets back, she will also be a good resource if you need to reach out. Two more in the Q&A. All right. These salaries are based off time in service. Is there an ability to be into a higher quartile based off merit? So step placement, time in series is responsible for your step placement. Not time in service, time in series. So you could have been with the state for 30 years. If you're currently in the accountant series and you've only been in the accountant series for 5 years, well, only that time in series in the accountant series will count towards your step placement. And then to the second part of that question there, merit is not impacted, does not impact step placement. Comparing other state agencies, do they take into account total compensation, including overtime, hazard pay, callback pay, on-call? For example, some exempt employees earn overtime when our exempt employees do not. This study primarily looked at base salaries only. We do a quadrennial total compensation review for the entire classified system. However, when we do system maintenance studies, we only focus on base salary. It would actually increase the scope quite a bit if we looked at all of that information. So yeah, we focus primarily on base salaries. I was told that if the class did not exist before, but we were doing the job prior, that it would be counted towards step. Is this not correct? The firefighter class is still fairly new. So if there were, so that's a good question. If you're referring to what we call consolidations or deconsolidations, like I actually noticed, it looked like I think the firefighter series was actually part of the general professional series. I actually meant to clarify that because I've only been with the state for since April of last year, so I wasn't around during some of those old times. But yes, the answer is that if you were in one of these series that was consolidated or deconsolidated, such as the general professional series, that time will count towards your current class series. There's a couple caveats to that. Like if you were in the general professional series and then you move to the accountant series right after the deconsolidation, and then since then you've moved to the human resources specialist series, well, then that time will not count. However, in this case, if you were in the general professional series and then deconsolidated into the firefighter series, your time as the general professional will also count. If one is in a new job and negotiated a higher step at hiring, is the employee at risk of being reset? One cannot lose money in this process, right? Yes, that is correct. No one will receive a decrease as a result of the step pay program. For system maintenance studies, it is possible that when we change pay ranges and an employee's class placement changes, it is possible that an employee's current salary can end up above the maximum of their new pay range. If that were to occur, saved pay would apply, meaning that the employee's pay rate would not change for at least 3 years. But steps, system maintenance studies, no one's rate will actually decrease as a result of steps or system maintenance studies. So thank you for asking that, so I could call that out. Step pay does not take experience before working with the state as experience. That's correct. Only time in series counts towards towards an employee step placement, and that is what was negotiated with Cohen's. So that's why we are using time in series. All right, we'll give it a few more moments here. That folks might be still typing in questions, get their questions heard. Okay. Oh, do temps years count towards steps? I can say what exactly is listed on the FAQs, which is time spent in your current class series is what counts towards steps. Now, for system maintenance studies, that is also true. Even if your series were to change on July 1st, 2024, it's what your current series is. Time spent in your current series will count towards steps. So I believe the answer is no to that question. But depending on what you mean by the word temp, there could be individual situations that might be different. And actually, that might be a good question to send to the step pay inbox in case you'd like to, maybe with a few more details around your actual past classifications and employee status. All right. Well, if anybody thinks of any other questions, please feel free to send them my way. For a lot of them, we got some more flowing in here. Looking at Firefighter 6 and 7, the starting range would be $500 to $1,000 less in the month. Hard to imagine those positions rated out that much less than the comparison agencies. So again, it's really important to remember when you're reviewing these pay ranges. The new structure is totally different from the current one. Firefighter 6 and 7 do not mean the same thing following this study as they have previously. Firefighter 6 and 7 were previously the highest two levels within the states, within DFPC, within the firefighter series. Now firefighters 8 and 9 will be the highest two levels. Now that doesn't mean that 6 and 7 are the same as 8 and 9. They're not. But when you're looking at these, you don't want to look at the current range for a firefighter 6 and compare it to the range for the new firefighter 6. It's kind of like we just wiped out the 7-level structure and we just created a whole new structure with 9 levels. So important to remember that you don't want to compare, the current firefighter 4 to the new firefighter 4, the current firefighter 6 to the new firefighter 6. If you worked in the general professional series prior to it becoming the firefighter class, left the agency, and then came back as a firefighter class, will those previous years count? Yes. Probably the easiest one to count, employee to answer so far. If you leave and come back, your time spent at the state, you don't lose it just because you leave and come back. We'll definitely give it a minute here just for folks who's might still be typing. All right, well, I will talk slowly here in case any other questions come in. But again, for questions about your individual situation, I recommend reaching out to your HR team first because they understand your individual positions better than I, and they were the primary ones responsible for placing individual positions into classes. And then we all reviewed together just to make sure that everything was reasonable and that we could align on them. But other than that, there's the step pay inbox. Annabelle had posted the link to the step pay website, which is a great resource. And now my alarm's going on. So with that, I guess we can conclude today's Meet and Confer. Thanks everybody for your questions. Thanks for being here. Thanks.